you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. The big podcast, Circus Tent in the Sky. We're bringing you all the brightest people. The show where all the billionaires come, the CEOs, the brilliant minds, the great new authors, the newsmakers, all the hottest people we've had on the show. We did 655 shows in the last year, ending in August, and we're planning on doing 1,000 shows this year. So if you're not keeping up on the shows, damn it, I want you to quit your day job and make sure you listen to every single one. Don't do that. Don't quit your day job. Just work weekends, people. Listen to the show. We always have the most brilliant minds on the show. And as always, we have another one here today. We're going to be talking about imposter syndrome and what it is, how it works, how and why you might be suffering from it, and how you can free your mind. Not like my psychiatrist who wants to free my mind through a frontal lobotomy. So this might be a better way to do things, healthier, and you'll have a memory too, but you'll probably smile less. Anyway, guys, we're going to be talking to her about her amazing new book that's coming out tomorrow and all that good stuff. But as always, that's the setup to guilt and shame you, to refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Put your arm around them, look deep into their soul, and say, you know what? If only you could be smarter and listen to the Chris Voss Show. I know that you can do it. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, and Chris Voss one on the tickety-tockety over there, as the kids like to call it. No, they don't. She is an amazing new author, multi-book author, I should have mentioned as well. Dr. Tara Halliday is on the show with us today, and she is a specialist in being a imposter syndrome coach. So what she'll do is she'll help coach you to have more imposter syndrome. No, that's not true. That's not right. You read that wrong, Chris. No, she's a coach to help you solve your issues with imposter syndrome. Am I an imposter on this one? I don't know what's going on. This might be my doppelganger who's on the show today. Anyway, she's the author of the newest book that comes out September 14th, 2023. Outsmart Imposter Syndrome. End the suffering. Free your mind. Claim your inner success. Tara Halliday joins us on the show, and she'll be talking to us about that. She guides high-achieving leaders to eliminate imposter syndrome and develop energy, focus, calm, resilience, and effortless confidence. She has a PhD in engineering and over 20 years experience as a qualified holistic therapist and certified coach. She brings a practical and scientific approach to helping high performers reach their highest potential. She's the author of the #1 bestseller, Unmasking, The Coach's Guide to Imposter Syndrome, and Outsmart Imposter Syndrome, that's just coming out now. We'll be talking about today. Her mission and passion are to free high achievers and leaders from unnecessary internal suffering and bleeding, that they can live healthy, happy, meaningful, successful lives. I added the bleeding part. Welcome to the show, Tara. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Chris. Delighted to be here.
Delighted. There you go.
Delighted,
and you're coming to us across the pond, because delighted sounds like something the English would use in a proper sense.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There you go. God save, well, I guess it's the king now.
The king, yeah. We have a new king.
I don't know about all that, but that's another show. So there you go. But the queen was elegant and wonderful. So give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs, please.
That's outsmartimpostersyndrome.com.
There you go. And give us what motivated you to write this book? You wrote your previous book on unmasking imposter syndrome. What motivated you to write this one?
So my previous book was for coaches. So it's for coaches to help them help their clients with imposter syndrome. This one is for people who are experiencing imposter syndrome itself. So that's the direction. The reason for it is, like, the bigger reason is that imposter syndrome affects over 70% of high achievers at some point in their careers.
Really?
And it can, the stress of it can lead people to end their careers. It can lead to burnout. It's serious stuff. And There's not a lot of good help out there.
There you go. And I've heard a lot of people talk about it, especially women. I seem to see a lot of women that talk about it the most. I don't know why. Maybe that's because women are self-reflective and they're like always thinking of what goes on with them. Men, we just kind of like, I don't know, I'll just do it. And we don't really think about it. We probably have some sort of imposter syndrome, but it's kind of like us and doctors. We never go have it looked at. What is imposter syndrome? How would you define this, or how is it defined?
Yeah, so imposter syndrome is the secret feeling of being a fraud when you're
Mm.
not. And
Ah,
with that comes the fear of being found out.
ah. For 15 years, I've always thought people was going to figure out that I'm not really a podcaster and that I'm just really good at Legos. And yeah, I don't know. That's the best I could do off the fly, folks. Legos. I don't know. Probably a better joke there. You fill it in for me. Or you write the show and tell me what I should have said. See, I'm an imposter on comedy. Comedy. Must be the end of the day, man. What's going on, Chris? It's hump day in the middle of the week, Wednesday. Give us a 30,000 overview of the book and what's inside.
Okay, so the book itself is about imposter syndrome. So it introduces it, what it is, what it isn't, the symptoms. But really, what it is I'm sharing the secrets of how to get rid of it
Mm.
when you understand what the root cause of it is. And that's really the whole point. So I go step by step through it. And because there's a lot of hand waviness with imposter syndrome, it all seems a bit vague to people.
Oh.
I've gone right down into the hard science of why the process works, how you can get rid of it, and exactly why, right down to the neurochemicals in the brain.
So there's some neurochemicalization to it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your origin story and your background. What got you down the road of life and the twists and turns of the roadway and into this field?
Yeah, well, it definitely was a twist and turn. I did my degree in engineering. I got a PhD in engineering. But the reason I was in engineering is because actually, when I was 13, I decided I wanted to be a psychologist.
Mm.
But my family didn't want that for me. So
Oh.
I spent a 10-year diversion going off into engineering, finally came back, trained as a holistic therapist. And that's where I started. And
Hmm.
then moving forward, I was seeing clients and some of them kept coming back. And they're not supposed to do that, not they're supposed to come for a little while and then, fly and be free.
Yeah.
But I'm not supposed to be a crutch for them. So then I dove into why do they keep coming back? That turned
Hmm.
out to be their beliefs. So I got trained in a very specific coaching around beliefs, the belief of unconditional worth.
Hmm.
And then one of my clients came and said, "Hey, what's this imposter syndrome?" This was like
Mm.
2016, and I'd never heard of it at that point. So I researched it, and there was this big light bulb moment. Oh, good grief. This is the belief of unconditional worth. So that's how I got connected to imposter syndrome. The
There you go.
rest is, yeah.
And so did you find that you were suffering from that throughout your life, maybe?
I never noticed it,
Hmm.
right? Didn't have words for it. Probably the strongest place it came out when I first graduated, I applied for a graduate trainee program with this big engineering firm. They
Hmm.
were doing all sorts of tests and they came back and they said, "We don't want to offer you a graduate apprenticeship effectively." They said, "We want to put you on a fast track management."
Oh, there you go. That's better.
Yeah, and I went, "Oh, no." And I went back to university to get my PhD because I was avoiding that's one of the imposter syndrome behaviors. I was avoiding the leadership role, something that I thought that I'd fail at. Now, I didn't recognize this as imposter syndrome at all. This was, I just told myself, "Oh, management, that sounds boring."
It can
And
be.
and that, well, yeah, but it also can be,
Hmm.
as now I know, leadership can be a wonderful, fantastic, exhilarating thing to do. Definitely not boring.
Hmm.
But I didn't recognize it, and that's what most people experience with imposter syndrome is they don't recognize it for what it is because people see the symptoms. They don't see the root cause of it. And I certainly didn't see that avoiding that particular career path was imposter syndrome. I only noticed it decades later.
There you go. And you have on your website too, if people are sitting in the audience and they're like, what if I have imposter syndrome? And then your imposter's like, I wonder if I have imposter syndrome. And then your other this is like my personalities. So you have a chance to get a full report on your website. And so
Yeah.
I took your imposter syndrome test
Oh,
today
you
before the
did?
show. Yeah, I did.
Fantastic.
I thought it was funny. I scored a 22%, and it said I have malignant. What did it say? I had a malignant Machiavellianism and dark triad traits. And I said, well, that sounds about right. I mean, some of the questions I wanted to say that I didn't really feel, but I couldn't lie. I mean, there are times where you question stuff. If you start a task, you're like, this could suck and fail. But, I've kind of learned that if I work hard and a little bit of luck and, fumble through stuff enough, one of my big things is if it's hard and challenging, chew the elephant, one bite at a time. You just sit down and go, all right, let's just take this thing apart one bite at a time. And, working hard and put you in a position for luck. And so I've just kind of learned that, my laziness is my biggest problem in life. And so I don't know if I work hard, but I seem to have done pretty good with it. Other than, it told me I was Machiavellian. No, it didn't. I'm just making that stuff
It
up.
does not say that.
It
No.
doesn't. Yeah. I should clarify that. It's very nice.
So you're in the lowest category for people with
Oh, really?
imposter syndrome.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've, out of a range
Damn
of,
it.
4. Yeah. So
I was going to take this up as a new hobby.
So, but one of the things about it is that, there's one myth, right? One of the misconceptions out there that is that imposter syndrome is something that happens when you're learning something new, when you're a beginner. And the reason is because it's difficult, learning's hard, it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable, it's really uncomfortable. And, we don't like it. We just have to, push through it and then gradually learn some more and get more comfortable. And because imposter syndrome, that self-doubt is also uncomfortable, there's many people who think it's the same thing, but it's not. So this
It's
is
not
why.
self-doubt then.
Well, it is self-doubt,
Oh,
but
it
it's
is.
not it's not the discomfort of being a beginner. It's not the learning thing. So
Okay.
you'll see some, and you see some influencers talking about it, and they say, "Hey,
Uh-huh.
it's you just got to practice more." And it's like, actually, no, imposter syndrome strikes when you're capable, you're competent, you've done a million shows, right? And yet you still feel doubt. You still feel, why would, Meryl Streep, after 75 movies, she think, why would anyone come and want to watch me in a movie? Right?
Sometimes I think about that with the show. But I mean, sometimes you look at the show, and I guess this wouldn't be imposter syndrome, but sometimes you'll have a bad show, and you're like, I
Mhm.
wasn't 100% on that show. It could have been funnier. I missed some timing points and some cues, and I missed some jokes, and sometimes that is because I am tired, and I'm not feeling up to par, but or getting enough sleep usually this last week, but um, you just kind of go, hey, do better next time. If you have that sort of insight. But I guess that's not really imposter syndrome. That's just realizing, you made a stupid mistake.
Yeah, it's not being perfect. A
Mm.
lot of imposter syndrome is related to the expectation that you
Ah.
should be perfect. That's one of the
Mhm.
symptoms. And so that means that if you had a bad show, then with imposter syndrome, you might lie awake all night afterwards, fretting about it, beating yourself
Mhm.
up, saying, "Oh, this just proves that I don't belong on a radio show. I should, go off and, you know, cut trees for a living," or something like
Mhm.
that.
Do you find my summation by my rough edged polling is that women suffer this more than men? Is that true?
That's actually another myth.
Really?
But it has a basis. Like, the
Mhm.
original research back in 1978 was done on
Mhm.
graduate women, and it seemed to show that women experienced it more than men.
Mm.
And then for, 15 to 20 years after that, further research seemed to reinforce that. But then in the 90s, there was some research done where they made the survey absolutely confidential, totally anonymous, and then the numbers came out equal. So what all these other surveys had captured was a cultural trend where men are not allowed or won't allow themselves or not willing to express what they consider to be a weakness.
Yeah.
So it's a cultural thing. So it's a cultural artifact that they found. But actually, men and women experience it equally. And when you get to the root cause of it, you'll see also that there's no gender difference at all.
That's interesting to me. Maybe it's just because I see more women talking about it. I mean, my polling comes off of I see more women talk about imposter syndrome online, in posts, in all my things. I always equated it to, women's social value and community value is higher of a concern for them, their value, their PR of how they present in the world, what people's opinions are of them. Or as men, especially alpha males, we just don't give a fuck about what anybody's opinion is of us, which is probably the narcissism and the dark triad and the Machiavellianism your thing accused me of. And so I just always equated that. But, like I say, as men, we don't go to the doctors. We don't go to the psychotherapists. We just wait until, I don't know, an appendage falls off. And then we're like, well, damn it. And then we glue that back on and go for a while then. And, that's why we always die early, I guess. So I just always kind of figured it was more women because I see more women talk about it. Maybe they're just more self-reflective, or they talk about it in their communities so they can help each other.
Well, I think there is part of it is that, but the other part of it is there are studies that, targeting women say, hey, women, do you suffer from imposter syndrome? And, that is so damaging, right? Because if a woman thinks that it's a woman's thing, it feels like there's something fundamentally wrong with being a woman, right? And then if a man is experiencing imposter syndrome, what they think is then a women's issue, then they feel even more isolated, even more like they don't belong. And so everybody loses. But with my clients are executives, 2/3 of them are men, 1/3
Wow.
women.
Okay.
And that's about the ratio of men and women at the executive level, right?
There you go.
Which just shows that it's another way that it's equal among
That's
the
interesting.
genders.
Well, I guess women just have more self awareness than us men when it comes down to it and can talk about it. Maybe it's the fact that we can't talk about it. We don't. We just bury everything in our stoicism. So there's 10 imposter syndrome behaviors. Do you want to tease those out and tell us what some of those are?
Yeah, so I'll start slightly higher if that's okay. There's
Sure.
there's three types of symptoms. There's the
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome thinking, like you're not who am I to do this? I just got lucky. I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the physiological stress going into fight, flight, and freeze, and the body's
Oh.
reaction. That causes people then to do the imposter syndrome behaviors, like their coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two kinds. One is hiding to try and get yourself out of the spotlight. So that includes things like procrastinating, not speaking up enough when you should or when you can, avoiding opportunities like I did with that role, and I went to my PhD instead. Deflecting praise, right? To say, oh no, it was just good timing. Oh, it was my team, something like that, and keeping it a secret. So that's the hiding behaviors, right? And then the other start is striving behaviors, and that's where you've got this idea that I must be good enough. I don't feel good enough, therefore I must make myself good enough. So that's the perfectionism, comparing, over preparing, feeling like you never have enough qualifications, so always getting one more, hoping the next one's going to prove that you're good enough, and you just collect more, and then finally just pushing through, just trying to shut down all this feeling, all this stress, all this nagging in your ear that you're not good enough, and just try and drive through it, and that is where you start to lead to burnout.
There you go. Burnout is not good.
No, it's very serious, and has been linked to suicidal thoughts and in the extreme, but more usually it leads to people ending their careers.
Yeah, there
So
you
it's
go.
serious, yeah.
Being
So
being unhappy and miserable. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So these not so imposter syndrome isn't all of these. Everyone has a unique profile, if you like,
Okay.
combination of. So So
So some
one,
might be more pronounced than others.
right, right.
Huh. There you go. So when people suffer through these things, I guess the first step is becoming aware of what imposter syndrome is. The first step is knowing you have a problem, as they say in
Hmm.
AA,
Yes.
and then seeking help for it. And so people can do that through your books, through your coaching, and stuff like that. Um, what are some of the detriments that you see that people do in their lives, or how does it drag down people's lives? And some examples you've seen where it's really impacted people's lives and they didn't realize how much destruction it was bringing.
Yeah, you can see it with a pattern of say over preparing, right?
Oh,
So that's where you've got something like this big presentation coming up. You get more stress than it. Okay, although you've nailed every other big presentation that you've done, right? So your past doesn't prove it to yourself that it's going to be good enough. So you worry about it and you do far more work than it requires to prepare for it. Now, the problem with that, then it just takes up more of your time. You're distracted and you're stressed. You're stressed and you can't think properly. Studies done at Princeton University shows that when you're highly stressed, you actually lose 13 IQ points. Like, it's a huge gap.
wow. And I'm already down 13 IQ points as it is. So there's
Uh,
that.
who has 13 points to spare? I certainly
I
don't
think I only
have.
had 13 to start with before I sucked on those lead paint chips as a kid when I was shaving off the garage for my grandfather. So there you go. Is it come down to self-worth? Is self-worth a factor in here of having a good self-esteem, a self-value, a self-worth, self-accountability, self-actualization, things like that? Or
It's getting in that direction. It's not low self-esteem and it's not low confidence.
Mm,
That's another one of the myths. If it was low self-esteem or low confidence, it would affect every area of your life,
yeah.
right? So it would show up. And people who are high achievers tend to have achieved. They've done stuff. They're capable of doing, great things. So it's not that. But the root cause of it is a belief that your worth is not low, but your belief that your worth is conditional, that it depends on what you do.
Oh.
So if you do something well, you're as a person are good. If you do something poorly, you as a person are bad.
Oh. See, I see it. I guess I look at it from a different angle. Where if I do something bad, maybe I didn't work hard enough. And I see it. I see it assigned to the task because I'm not going to take responsibility for it being my fault. But
Yes.
no, I
Well,
look at it.
that's why you scored low on the
Yeah,
test,
that's why I
right?
got the
Because
Machiavellian score there. Yeah,
it's because what we do is we combine our worth with our actions.
yeah.
Now, so if after, say you've got a show that totally bombed, obviously not this one because you're on fire today, but
Thank
if
you.
one totally bombed, right? And you would do the analysis of it, so
Hmm.
you'd reflect on it, you'd say, "Oh, maybe I was tired, maybe we had problems with the audio," or, these kind of
I
things.
just blame
What
the
can I
guest
learn?
usually.
You can blame the guest, yes, all of that, right? But
Sometimes.
you don't mean it make it about you. Like,
Uh-huh.
maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, maybe
Yeah.
I should, go and be a tree surgeon.
Just quit the podcast after 15 years. Screw this. I
Exactly,
have no
yeah,
idea
yeah.
what I'm doing.
Clearly it's not
I've seen
working, yeah.
some podcasters that need to do that, but they're not this far along. So there's that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so this is a really big deal. I'm really amazed at how many people really struggle with this. But
Yeah,
there's I mean, it's an interesting world, and people seem to be suffering from more and more issues. And now you have a thing where you talk about spotting imposter syndrome in others, and why is it important to spot that? And say I'm going into business with them, or I'm trying to do maybe a deal or something, or some sort of relationship deal where, vendor supplier thing. Why is it important to notice people who might be suffering from imposter syndrome, and is there something I should be aware of? Like, maybe we shouldn't do business with these people.
Yeah, well, the psychology researchers agree with that. Right?
Hmm.
They say, that when imposter syndrome first was discovered or uncovered, if you like, it's like, okay, what personality traits? How can we tell if someone has imposter syndrome? And they spent decades trying to find the personality trait that is linked to it, and they can't find one. It's virtually impossible to spot imposter syndrome in someone else because people tend to keep it in a secret. It's an internal dialogue. So outside, there might be someone who, they've just done this presentation, given a speech, and they look fantastic and they look relaxed and competent, they're fluent, everything's smooth. And you just don't see what's going on internally for them and how much they're judging themselves, berating themselves, doubting themselves, and
Hmm.
exhausting that is. So you really can't spot it unless someone says it. And, a lot of my clients, when they've talked about it after they've been through the program, they've mentioned it to other people. And usually people will say, "Oh, I had no idea. I would swear that you didn't. You always seem so confident." And that's the thing. And that's why, yeah, it's why you can't filter for it really.
There you go. I
Yeah.
I I think the one time I felt the most imposter syndrome uh experience, and I was ready to throw it on the mic and walk off the stage. I was speaking at a trucking convention for truckers in Kansas City, I think it was, and no one had told me that. Well, I'll play the story this way. So I was on stage, and the first two rows, I had a lot of comedy loosening up of the show to do at the beginning, to get everybody loosened up, and so I started, doing whatever the jokes was. I had some local jokes and stuff, and the front row was looking at me like I was deadpanning, like I was dying hard, as they say in comedy. And they weren't laughing, and they were just looking at me like I was a freak. They're just like looking at me like just
Mm.
like nothing. Like I couldn't get any of the front rows to respond to me in any way. In fact, if anything, they just look at me, and they turn and look at each other and start talking to each other. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm losing the room. And I just got started, and I was I was screaming in my brain, throw down the mic, walk off. This isn't, somehow you fail as a speaker. This is not for you. You're not funny. I really started going into a tailspin, and I
Mm.
and usually in that case, as a comedian, you'll start trying to work them, and you'll start focusing on them. And I so I did, and that threw me even further off because you're trying to give a speech, you're not trying to do stand up, and I couldn't get anybody to respond or jive with me. I mean, I was getting to the point where I was going to start picking people out and start doing an improv and start, "Hey, where'd you get that shirt from?" That's the whole sort of bit, and it was just screaming in my head. And so I happened, just finished the podcast. Fortunately, some people had some great questions in the back, and I just said, F these people in the front row. George Carlin had a bit where he says, if you got a show that's funny and everywhere you go it's funny, but you go to, I don't know, Georgia, somewhere in the backwoods of Georgia, and they don't think it's funny, screw those people. They just don't get it. And so that's kind of the conclusion I came to. It was a horrible speech I gave, and it was just a rambling mess. Threw everything off. I came off the stage and I went to the back of the room, and I said to the people back there that came up to me, like, that was great. It was great. Yeah. I said, what the fuck is going on with the front rows? And they go, oh, that's the deaf coalition of the truckers. They're all deaf. Didn't you see the signer on the side of the stage? I'm like, yeah, I kind of saw that, but I know you guys are recording this for a video, so I thought it was for, people bought the video. And that was another lesson I learned, is if you're gonna go speak someplace, go spend some time and read the room, and before you get on stage. And so they were deaf. They didn't understand what I was saying. They weren't getting any of my jokes. And here I was ready to quit. But that was probably the worst imposter syndrome I ever had. I literally was ready to throw on the mic and quit
Yeah,
speaking forever
yeah,
and walk off the stage and quit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What an experience! Oh my gosh! But it's because you made it. Then the translation in your head was, "This must be me."
Yeah,
You must,
I thought it
yeah,
was me.
yeah,
I'm like, I suck at this. I'm not
yeah.
funny, people have been placating me this whole time, going like, "Oh, clap for idiot boy. He thinks he's funny. He's cute." Yeah, I don't think I've ever died ever that hard anywhere.
Wow.
And the more I focused on that front row, the more I was just sucked into a black hole of oblivion because they just weren't getting it. And
Yeah.
so anyway, that was my imposter syndrome experience.
But you did hear that bit at the end where these guys came up to you and said, the ones who could hear it, "Oh, that was great,"
Yeah, they liked
right?
it, and I was like, "That sucked." That
So
was like the worst
exactly.
ever.
So the only place that your show bombed was in your head. Everyone else who could
Yeah,
hear it thought it was great.
yeah.
Yeah,
It was good that I
and
didn't
that's the
give up.
thing.
So there you go. Maybe that's a
Yes.
lesson that you teach and telling people if you feel you're in that moment of being overwhelmed with imposter syndrome, don't give up. Just keep pushing through. Maybe.
You could do. It depends, because pushing through can be one of the defensive behaviors for it.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's separating out your actions from your worth.
There you
So
go.
at that point, you are blending it with I must I'm not getting a response, therefore I suck. Rather than, I'm not getting a response, "Gee, this is weird, I've done this so many times."
Yeah.
Yeah? Well, how strange, I'm just gonna talk to the people in the back if
Yeah, I finally just thankfully said, "Screw these people," and
Yeah.
I started noticing people in the back were responding to me, and I responded. I realized I had to focus. Yeah, as a
Yeah.
comedian, you notice the people in the room that aren't laughing, and you
Mm.
tune into them, and it becomes like a game in your head to make them laugh, and it starts to really mess with your head. Because in the meanwhile, the whole room's probably laughing and they're having a good time, and you're just like trying to figure out why Joe Bob there up front has no comedy. So there you go.
Yeah. Mm.
One of the things you talk about too is um, some people try affirmations, I guess, affirmations
Yeah.
to deal with imposter syndrome. I guess they're like that bit that what's his face used to do on SNL where he sat in front of the mirror and went, "People like me." Was the Ed Franken or Al Franken bit? How come
Yeah.
affirmations don't work for this sort of thing?
Yeah, so affirmations, affirmations have got the what we'd say here in the UK is a Marmite thing. You either love it or you hate it, right? And so
Mm,
you love affirmations because affirmations have this reputation, right, of a person who's broke and can't pay his rent, sitting in the mirror saying, "I am a millionaire, I am a millionaire," and not going out and doing anything about it except trying to convince himself that he's a millionaire. That's the bad reputation
right.
that affirmations have.
Mhm,
Um, Affirmations work with a particular part of the brain,
mhm,
and that part of the brain is the part that notices information and kind of plays it back to you. So,
mhm,
if you were gonna if you were gonna buy a new car, what car, if your dream car, what would your next car be?
mhm. For me, it'd be a
Yeah,
Porsche. That's
okay.
on the agenda.
Porsche, lovely. What color?
I don't really know.
Mm,
Something that the chicks like. I'm a single guy at 55. I've had 3 BMWs, and I love BMWs with all my heart and soul. But it's time for something different. But I don't know, red hot maybe.
it's
I don't know.
probably gonna have to be the hot red
There you
Porsche.
go. Whatever
Yeah,
the
there you
chicks
go.
dig,
That's
whatever
it.
the chicks are
Yes.
like. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool. There you go.
Yeah. So you start shopping for your Porsche, right? And
Mhm,
you start paying attention, you look at the specs, you go for a test drive, and all that time that you're putting that attention on it, you're telling your brain, "Hey, this is important."
mhm,
Right? This is important to me, and what your brain will do, the certain part of your brain called the reticular activating system for
mhm.
people who know the brain. What your brain will do is then start pointing it out to you. So what
Yeah.
you'll find is you suddenly see more Porsches, and you'll suddenly see more red Porsches as well.
Mhm.
Not because there's suddenly more on the road, but because your brain's now paying attention to it.
There you go.
So that is how the brain is supposed to work, right?
Mhm,
So, say you're starving and walking along in a rainforest and you spot an edible plant, that's your brain saying, "Hey, of all the billions of bits of information, that's an edible plant. That's important." So
there you go.
that's how affirmations are supposed to work. They don't work if they're not true. Here back to the millionaire thing,
Ah.
right? They won't work because your brain's got this model of how the world works, right?
Mhm.
And it trusts it, right? This has kept you alive so far. It's really fundamental. And if you try to tell it something it doesn't believe, it's just going to go, no. So if you tell
There.
it something that is that you do believe, like your values, you can focus on your values, do affirmations, and then your brain will point out those things about those values. And so you'll be more authentic, right? So that's how they can do. Now, come to imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is this deep level belief. The root cause of it is deep level belief that your worth depends on what you do. Your worth is conditional. And so if you stand in the mirror and you tell yourself, I am enough, right? I am good enough. Your brain's going to go, oh, no, you're not. Because it doesn't fit to the model of the world, right? So
Uh-huh.
to change that belief, you have to then go through a very specific process to change the way that your brain interprets that particular thing. And that's then we're going deep into the science of how to change a belief, a deep-seated belief.
There you go, and that leads me into my other question I had for you. The affirmations element of trying to do it. We see kind of in this culture lately of this fake it till you make it thing. I don't know if you guys have that over on that side of the pond,
Mhm.
but over here, it's everywhere, especially in social media. There's lots of FOMO, what they call FOMO, fear of missing out. And
Mhm.
so people fake it till they make it. Like we'll see these people on Instagram and social media. They'll go rent a car for a day, like a Ferrari, and get some expensive jewelry on loan, and then take pictures to pretend like that's their life. They actually have places in LA where you can go to a studio set that has a private plane fuselage cutout. It's just a piece of it, and they have it looks like you're sitting on the private plane. It's got like the windows, and meanwhile the rest of it's a studio, and it's got the champagne, and you're like, we're playing on the thing, we're living the life. But they call it the fake it till
Well,
you make it sort of mentality, and it sounds like that might fall in the same failure field as what happens when you try and use affirmations.
yeah, yeah. So
Hmm.
the first point about imposter syndrome, it's not about being an actual imposter. So
Ah,
it's not sitting in a fake plane and trying to pretend, right?
those are the real imposters.
I've seen those photos actually. Oh gosh, my mind has just been blown all that time. I thought it was genuine. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's not try to fake it. The fake it till you make it is usually what's told to people when they're on a learning path, right? So we're going
Mm.
back to this being a beginner, right? You're in a learning environment, so just try. It's more of a just try it, just don't give up because you haven't got it perfect, the first time. Right?
Mhm.
Everybody's got to learn. I think that's the healthy way for fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it for imposter syndrome is really bad advice. Really, really bad advice because people already feel like they're a fraud, right? So the
Yeah.
advice that now take that inner feeling and now deliberately make yourself a fraud. And that just
Self-fulfilling prophecy right there.
well, yeah, but that'll just ramp up the stress. So, you'll get sleepless nights, you'll get anxiety, you'll get overwhelmed.
Mm.
Your body will more easily go into fight, flight, and freeze states. Your nervous system will respond like that as if it's an emergency, and that's when you lose your 13 points of your IQ because literally the blood gets taken away from the front part of your brain and sent to your
Wow.
muscles. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
wow.
the study.
'Cause you're in
Mm,
fight or flight mode. That explains it. It's enabling your muscles so they can fight,
yes.
and 13 IQ points, that was all I had left going for me, so once I lose that, man, the tank's empty. So what are some ways you can maybe tease out, to have people, get rid or assist themselves in, regulating their imposter syndrome? Obviously, people need to order the book up from Amazon.com or, work with you as a coach, but, can you tease out a little bit to us?
Yeah, so there's two things you can do with that. First, you can either try and manage it,
Mhm.
right? Or you can get rid of it. So to manage it, the easiest place to start is with your nervous system. Right, so let's claim back those 13 points of IQ, right? So that is doing things that will get you calm. So there are exercises that you can do, like shaking out your muscles to get the
Oh.
stress hormones out of your bloodstream
Mhm.
quickly. Then some deep breathing, and then there's all sorts of exercises. They're personalized, so it's what fits you. But
Mhm.
anything that you can do, try and get rid of any external stresses as much as you can. Right? Anything that's unnecessary. If you've got a belief that you've just done this very long week and you have to mow the lawn this
Mhm.
Sunday and you hate it and it's just get go find a Boy Scout and get them to mow your lawn, right?
There you go.
Little things like that just to take down the stress, which is about, getting support from those around you, basically. So that's the easiest thing to do. When you're less stressed, then you're less likely to do the coping behaviors that we talked about, the procrastination, the perfectionism, the
Mhm.
over-preparing. So that's at its most basic level. And I go through the things that you can do for all of that at the front part of my book. And then the second thing that you can do is to eliminate it completely. Now, to eliminate it, it's not about those 3 symptoms, it's about getting to the root cause of it, and that
Oh.
means a very specific process that you do to change the belief that your worth is conditional. So that's what we do in my program, is we change your conditional worth, where your actions and you are combined, and we separate them out and give you unconditional worth. And then
There you go.
this is like freedom, because you're not reactive, you're not taking things personally, you're confident, you have effortless confidence, you forget to doubt yourself, right? And when
Mhm.
you forget to doubt yourself, your worth, then you can be an adventurer. Then you can, take more positive risks, right? Because you haven't got this second track voice playing in your head saying, "Oh, don't know about that, you shouldn't do that."
There you go. Well, some good tips and stuff to do. And of course, people can go to your website and they can take your test, and
Mhm.
they'll probably get a higher score than me. But I
I
think,
should say so.
yeah, and you said it was like 78%, I think, of people suffer from this, right?
So 70% is the
Okay.
conservative, what the research has done. Other research has shown it's up to 82%.
Mm.
When we look at the root cause of imposter syndrome, that conditional worth,
Hmm.
that actually affects a lot more people, like 99.999% of people.
Wow.
And that belief, is so prevalent in everywhere in our society and in our psyches. But when we get to become high achievers, it shows up as imposter syndrome. So, the other 30% can be people who unwittingly are managing it quite well,
Hmm.
or completely oblivious to
Ah,
it.
that's what I like,
or
oblivious.
or there are the
Denial.
exactly, or there are the 4% of high achievers who are a clinical diagnosis of psychopath or sociopath.
Huh, which is
Yeah.
probably me. All right, then there you go. And if you can overcome imposter syndrome, you can get effortless self-confidence, authenticity, calm, and feeling in control. When you feel you're authentic and your authentic self, and your shtick, your
Mm,
stuff,
mm.
it's nice. It feels pretty good. And then I just walk around and tell everyone else they're dumber than I am. No, I don't do that, people. That's just a joke. That's that's probably the sociopath in me. A vibrant energy, focus, and productivity, and finally feeling good enough. All right, so this has been fun, and hopefully we've helped some people. Final thoughts as we go out.
So I think the final thoughts is, this isn't you. Imposter syndrome is not who you are. It's not
Mm,
your personality. You're not alone, and you can do something about it. So there's hope.
there's hope, and the best hope you can take and get is to go to Tara's website. Tara, give us your .com so we can find you on the interwebs.
It's outsmartimpostersyndrome.com.
There you go. And you can order up her book, Outsmart Imposter Syndrome and the Suffering. Free your mind, claim your inner success. And it's out tomorrow on September 14th, 2023. And if you're feeling even more frisky, get her private or her previous book, It's called Unmasking. I was trying to flip to the Amazon as I was talking there. Unmasking the Coach's Guide to Imposter Syndrome. So there's that as well. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Tara. We really appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
There you go. And hopefully we solve some riddles. And then, of course, people can reach out to you for private coaching and all that. They can contact you at your website.
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks, my honest, for tuning in, because without you guys, we couldn't do it. And even though some of you might also have imposter syndrome out there, tell them to listen to the show and sign up to subscription as well. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, and Chris Voss 1 on that tickety-talkety that the kids are always talking about over there. That's not what it's called. They don't say that, but I don't know. I like saying it. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.